One of my major reasons for joining the military during a time of war as infantry was I had to know that I had what it took to do something with my life, and I figured, well, if I join the military and go to war, at least that will make me a man, if nothing else does.
Sometimes some of us have this expectation of what life's going to be like when we return, and when it doesn't all pan out the way you plan for it, it can really overwhelm you.
So many of my sister-in-arms are going through the same thing I'm going through. They're homeless. They're sleeping in cars with kids, sleeping on friends' sofas.
War is horrible. It's not the glorious stuff you see in the old war movies. It's hard, but veterans can be changed for the better if we just get the help on the other side.
People who have moral injury are the people we want in the world. They're the people who have a conscience. They're the people who struggle with what it means to be human. Everything happens to us changes who we are. And if it's a devastating thing, a faith community is a way to hold that so you don't have to hold it all by yourself.
CBS presents Veterans Journey Home, Faith, Hope, and War. The narrator is Rollin Smith.
War changes people.
I actually don't think there's anything wrong with the veterans. That wouldn't happen to any good person who was asked to do those things and wanted to serve their country.
After the warm welcome home, many veterans find themselves asking, what next? As they create a new normal for themselves.
When I take off that uniform, I'm just a regular American. And that right there kind of tore me up. Because I built myself up as this Army Sergeant Mays, now I'm a nobody. And that right there just tore me apart.
They come home to a fairly clueless civilian population that rather than deal with the complexities of what they bring home, want to categorize them as heroes or head cases. For us to sort of think they're bad or they're evil or that we don't want to hear about it is our failure.
Since 9/11, more than 2.5 million Americans have fought in Afghanistan and Iraq.
We need to help them transition out of the war mind to the peace mind.
Craig Combs is a retired chaplain with the Texas National Guard. He served 2 tours in Iraq.
I try to link up veterans in need that recognize their spiritual need as well as all the medical, physical, other needs.
Today, he works for the Military Veteran Peer Network as a faith-based coordinator in Texas.
I constantly run onto someone else, some other organization that are doing things to help veterans. And in my particular expertise, more and more faith groups that are doing that. The problem is there's still a lot of veterans falling through the cracks.
Roughly 22 veterans commit suicide every day. Part of the challenge is getting help to those who are least likely to ask for it.
From day one, they're saying, you can do this and you're going to fight to the end and don't show weakness. And then we get out and they tell us, go for help. We were never trained to go for help. I mean, not outside of who we're already with. We're not trained to reach out. It's a sign of weakness.
500,000 veterans come home with symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD.
The enemy is no longer Taliban. It's anxiety, it's depression, it's suicidal thoughts, it's guilt, it's remorse. We're not trained to defeat those enemies. And honestly, a lot of us don't even know that the enemy's there.
Less than half seek help for their condition.
They come back home and they don't know how to reconcile that life in combat to life in America again. So they do, what comes naturally. They try to cope with it. And sometimes that's using alcohol, using drugs, or driving crazy, or getting really, really angry all the time.
For veterans with mental health and addiction problems, it often results in a run-in with the law. To stop this growing problem, veterans courts like this one in Denton County, Texas, are popping up across America.
Just based on everything that you've done and you continue to do in this court, you continue to impress us.
David Garcia is the presiding judge.
Every case that comes in, we send them to a psychologist to kind of give us an understanding of what issues a veteran has when they come into the courtroom.
Vets who agree to the terms of the court are monitored 24/7, submit to regular drug testing, and are required to have an ignition interlock device. They are also paired with a mentor who was once a combat veteran.
Any other questions?
I was always thinking I'll never meet somebody I could talk to my problems about that could relate.
Aaron Throckmorton went to a veterans court in a neighboring county. He believes it saved his life.
I was just on a downward spiral ever since I got out. I mean, it was just bad. I mean, drinking, just isolating myself from my family, from anybody that wanted to be my friend.
He attempted suicide.
I started losing some people that were really, really close to me. And that was it for me. I snapped. And so one night I almost became a statistic. I attempted to cut my wrist and take my life. And thank God my brothers were there. Somebody had saw me wandering off out in the field.
After landing in jail with a DUI, Throckmorton agreed to enter the treatment program.
It made me recognize that, it's what I'm dealing with, other people are dealing with, and it's okay to open up about it. When I had my head straight and I decided I wanted to reconnect with my Creator. And man, I just saw everything that happened to me, and I just realized that I was never alone the whole entire time.
Throckmorton successfully completed the program in 2013.
I said, I want to find my way to give back. And so my way was like fitness.
He founded the Agoge Challenge, a fitness competition for disabled veterans.
War changes you, inevitably. Sometimes it's for the better. I mean, there's such a thing as post-traumatic growth, PTG. I've experienced some of that. Many others have.
Many servicemen and women find telling their story as one way to heal the wounds of war.
I had two of my best friends killed. Not being able to be back in country for their funerals and memorial services was a pretty big blow to me.
Brian Fleming was an Army combat veteran who served in Afghanistan. He suffered second-degree burns on his face and neck after a suicide bomber exploded 3 feet away from his convoy.
I remember after they started taking my burned skin off with razor blades at Brooke Army Medical Center while I was still awake and conscious, I prayed to die then. God didn't answer that prayer, and I'm thankful for that now. I didn't know what I was asking in that moment.
Today, he is a motivational speaker and recently co-authored a book called Redeployed.
Sometimes we don't even see the power of our own story, but people can look at our lives and see what God brought us through or the things that we overcame. I was able to gain a very redeeming perspective on my pain because I saw other people helped by it, which really, that did for me what medicine never did.
We will return after these messages.
According to the VA, there are over 2 million women veterans in the U.S.
I remember that day.
Yeah.
Too often, their strength and heroism go unrecognized.
The military taught me to be tough, and it taught me to take things in stride and keep moving when it gets tough. And I think that's why I survived as long as I did, was the fact that when it got tough, I got tougher.
A recent report by the Disabled American Veterans found that the needs of women are not being fully addressed by the U.S. military.
There are a lot of women who are serving or have served in the military, and because they're not readily identified, they're not getting the help that they need. They are put back into a male-dominated environment amongst other veterans, which is beneficial, but male veterans.
What grade you gonna go to?
Tabitha Presley joined the U.S. Army when she was 18.
Female or male, you have to be that soldier. You have to be all about the mission. And being a female was definitely harder because there are certain things that we have to push aside in order to complete the mission sometimes. And that was really, really hard to change. Your instincts are to help, to just be of assistance to either children, women, but in that situation, in a hostile environment, you never know what's a threat. And oftentimes we've seen that has been the case, where children have been a threat to soldiers and often even sometimes cost them their lives. So it was definitely hard morally.
Between 2002 and 2008, Presley served 2 tours in Iraq as an information systems analyst and operator.
I was also in an intelligence unit where there were only a couple of us. It was probably me and 2 other females. It felt awesome. It was a big responsibility and something that I definitely enjoyed.
What is that?
Presley hoped for a long career in the military, but shortly after giving birth to her daughter, she was asked to deploy a 3rd time.
What about your last name?
Presley was forced to choose between her budding military career and her role as a new mom.
Getting out in that sense, knowing that I still wanted to serve, but I could not, that was really, really hard for me, and consequently led to a lot of turmoil for me, even in the coming years.
Ronalda Murray served 13 years in the U.S. Army and was the first woman in her family to join. She did 3 tours in Iraq. With multiple deployments, it was difficult to leave her children behind.
I left my daughter, she was 6 months old. So she didn't really know me, but she knew of me. When I came back off of my 2nd tour, at that time she was 4 going on 5. And she looked up at me and she was like, "Is that my mommy?" And it was like my heart just broke.
Women also find it harder to translate military experience into a full-time job as a civilian.
The biggest thing that would help is when people get out of the military, male or female, the jobs that they performed in the military aren't automatically recognized in the civilian world.
When Murray left the military in 2010, she thought she would find a good paying job.
I was expecting to get a job that paid me almost the same as what I was getting from the Army, which doesn't happen. Once we come home, I looked at it, we took a 70% pay cut. And I was like, how are we gonna maintain with this? So my agenda was to get as much education as I could.
So she went back to school. Meanwhile, her husband, who was also a veteran, was laid off from his job without benefits.
At the time, we were paying $900 a month rent, $200 and something light bill, $350 truck note, insurance, kids. My back was against the wall.
The family was forced to live in their car while they looked for affordable housing.
I called the shelters. They wouldn't take me because my son was over age. Our friends' houses were full of people already. So we really had nowhere to go. And before we even got to the point to where we were sleeping in a truck, we asked for help. Every door was closed.
At their wits' end, the family got the assistance they needed through a Catholic Charities program in Houston called the Lotus Project. It's one of the few programs in the country that caters to the needs of women veterans.
Lotus has eased a lot of pain. They've made sure that we've had food. They made sure that when we were moving in that all of our deposits were paid for our utilities. They even, the kids' school supplies, school clothes, shoes. It wasn't nothing that they could not do.
The Lotus Project also provides long-term housing to women veterans who qualify.
If a woman comes in with 3 children, we can't put her in a 1-bedroom or a single-room occupancy unit. So we want the community to know that, you know, we're just trying to make sure that these women have a safe community to live in. You know, the expectation is not to put someone in a house that I wouldn't live in myself.
Murray and her family recently moved into a 3-bedroom house provided by the organization.
I'm just thankful that I have someone that's willing to work with me while I go through this process of learning who I am outside of the military.
Asking for help is the first step.
I'm here and I'm happy.
Presley also found the support she needed through the Lotus Project. She moved to Houston 2 years ago.
That you chose Lotus.
I tried to do it without help. And when I got here, things got increasingly difficult to be on my own with 2 children, sleeping on the couch at a friend's house. And you have to make that decision, if not for yourself, for your children, to try to make it better.
Presley has gone back to school and will graduate in December with a degree in business.
I feel like my purpose now is to serve my fellow women veterans, to help them get to the point that I am now, which is a better understanding of the issues that I've had, to resolve those things, and just to be there for support. That's all we really need, is the support and the acknowledgement.
We will return after these messages.
Traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder are often referred to as the unseen wounds of war. Among scientists and doctors, there is an understanding of how to diagnose and treat those who suffer from it. But in recent years, another kind of unseen wound has surfaced, a wound of the soul. It's called moral injury.
Moral injury is the inner anguish that a good person can experience from something they did, something they failed to do, or something they witnessed that violates their core moral foundations.
While moral injury can happen to anyone at any time, in the context of war, it is inevitable.
That inner anguish can be pretty intense if the experience is intense. With the sort of craziness of war, you can lose control and start killing people when you shouldn't be, or you may be ordered to torture. There's a story of a Mormon woman very religious, who was in the military, and she was at Abu Ghraib. And one of the ways they tortured Muslim men was that it was one of the greatest humiliations was to be naked in front of a strange woman, a non-Muslim woman or a stranger. So they put her down as a tank, and they stripped the men naked with blindfolds on, and then she would be standing there and they'd take the blindfolds off so that they would be humiliated. She was so devastated by having to do that, she killed herself.
While moral injury is as old as war itself, it is a new field of study. Some believe it is tied to the high rate of suicide in military veterans.
I think the moral injury itself is an indication of a person's humanity. That, for me, a human being could be so upset, so devastated by something they'd done to violate that core sense of love and care for others, that they would kill themselves. It says something about the power of that spirit, that it would rather kill the body than give up that core humanity.
Those suffering from moral injury may have symptoms similar to post-traumatic stress, such as depression and suicidal thoughts. They may self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. However, the root causes are different. PTSD is fear-based, while moral injury stems from feelings of guilt and shame.
A lot of them will say things like, God will never forgive me for this. I don't know how I actually could do that. I can't live with myself. I'm trying to forget. I do, drugs every day. I drink every day so I can forget.
There is no clinical diagnosis for moral injury, and it cannot be healed with medicine.
For people who are really struggling with this really profound sense that they're not good anymore, saying it's a psychological problem isn't quite enough. Treatment can help, but really it's a spiritual problem.
According to Brock, to rebuild a moral identity, you need the support of the community. Religious institutions are in a unique position to help.
Every religious tradition has some way, maybe not a very good way at this point, but some way to understand and process people who violate their spirit, their core moral conscience. In Buddhism, it's called suffering or attachment. You're attached to things in the wrong way. In Christianity and Judaism, it's usually called sin. So there's some kind of language in which you feeling like you're not a good person anymore, that's something faith understands.
In 2009, Brock co-founded the Soul Repair Center at Bright Divinity School in Fort Worth, Texas. In addition to research and public education, the center trains clergy and clinicians on ways to help those suffering with moral injury.
It's a matter of drawing them back to, okay, where was that set of values? Where did that come from? What was it based on? Was it real or imagined? Is there really good in this world that can be violated? And if it's violated, how do we get back to the good?
If the religious leader and also a religious community of faith can present themselves and say, there's nothing that can't be forgiven by an almighty, forgiving, loving God. I know you may have trouble believing that now, but let's hang together and tell me what you think might be unforgivable in your situation. And I'll listen, and we'll talk it through. We'll go through this together.
Moral injury is complex and may not present itself immediately.
Some of the VA people are even saying that moral injury is the worst affliction because it's more like the slow burn underneath the fires of PTSD. So that little slow burn can burn a long time.
I remember the values we had, and they were good values.
Michael Killam is a Vietnam veteran.
You treated someone like you wanted to be treated. You respected everyone, not because you had to, because you wanted to. Those values that we had, the only way we could get them was to give them. That's the way we learned. And when I came back from Vietnam, they were all gone.
Drafted at the age of 18, he was a door gunner with the U.S. Army.
I grew up on a working ranch, and I was pretty proficient with guns. I didn't like killing. I didn't like that at all. Now, on the farm, I mean, in the ranch, you know, you had to kill animals. I don't know what it is about humans. I really thought I'd crossed some kind of invisible line.
4 months into his tour of duty, he was captured and tortured by the Viet Cong. He escaped 3 days later and returned to combat. He served 2 years and 3 days. When he returned home, he was a different man.
I don't know what it is about war, but my daddy never told me about war. My granddad never told me about war. And now I know why. I've never told anybody about war. I think I lost myself. I think my soul was gone. I think everything inside me was taken out.
He suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, but it was undiagnosed for much of his life.
I was one of the ones who would have flashbacks. And when I experienced a flashback, I was back. I was there. And they always ended the same. I was in a squad car with the lights on, and they put me in jail, and when they did that, it's like I got captured all over again. I was going to fight. It just built on all that negativity.
In addition to post-traumatic stress, he was also living with moral injury.
I'd catch myself every now and then. Something would come to me like a little bit of conscience, you know, and I'd push it way back down again. I wouldn't let it surface.
He self-medicated with heroin and alcohol.
I became such a sociopath that I didn't care one way or the other what people thought of me. We were all sick, just like they were just like me. Nearly every one of us had been divorced at least once or twice. We all isolated. We couldn't go to a Walmart. We couldn't go shopping. We didn't like to be around people.
8 years ago, Killam finally got treated for his addiction and is in long-term recovery. With the help of the Soul Repair Center, he is hoping to reclaim that part of him that was lost in the war.
I'm a lot different than I was 8 years ago, a lot different. In fact, night and day. But it's slow and it's over time, but I really do believe now what I lost was my soul.
Today, Killam is a program manager for Veteran Services in Tarrant County, Texas. He hopes his story helps his brothers and sisters in arms.
I want these kids to know that there's absolutely no thing that you have done that's going to alienate you from the human race. I've been there. I've done that. And yeah, it's going to take a miracle. Big deal. I mean, I've seen them happen. I've been part of them. And if you do this, you can't help but give back.
To view this program and others like it, go to cbsnews.com/religion and culture.